Hola a todos. Bienvenidos a mi historia de España. ¿Estáis preparados? Empecemos en 3, 2, 1. Or, hello everyone, welcome to my history of Spain. Are you ready? Let's begin in 3, 2, 1. In 1997, in the Atapuerca Mountains of north-central Spain, the Cimo de los Huesos was found, meaning, quote, cave of bones. A series of 13 skeletons were found. They were identified as Neanderthals and have been dated to 600,000 years old, marking the beginning of the history-filled country we call España. Around 160,000 years ago, the Mousterian culture began. Although it stretched all the way from Uzbekistan in Central Asia to Portugal on the Iberian Peninsula, a lot of stone tools made by them have been found in Spain almost exclusively for some reason. This culture ended 40,000 years ago, mysteriously. Around 1785 BCE, the El Agar archaeological site in Antas was inhabited by people. They left behind axes and impressive stone villages like the one you can see here on top of a giant monolith. These people were possibly the first people to use axes, but this is debated. Around 1100 BCE, the Phoenician and present-day Lebanese city of Tyre created a colony in the present-day city of Gadir or Qadir in South Spain, not too far from Gibraltar, which, since it's part of the UK, I can't talk about in this video. The Phoenicians left behind many ruins, including the one you see above, in southern Spain, and they remained here at least until 200 BCE. I'm saying that because that's when, the Romans came over. From 800 to 550 BCE, the Greeks created a colony known as Emporion, now called Ampurias. This colony was part of the larger colony known as Massalia, which is current-day Marseille in France. It ended in 550 BCE with the arrival of another people, which the peninsula it sits on is named after. Around 550 BCE, the natives of Spain, the Iberians, had adopted Greek and Phoenician traditions as well as culture. This can best be seen in the present-day city of Carmona, where very elaborate tombs were discovered a few years ago. Oddly enough, the Romans later discovered them for themselves and began burying their own dead in it. That's just creepy, Romans. From 700 BCE to 200 BCE, the Celtiberians, as they are now called, a branch of the Celts, settled the region of Galicia in the northwest of Spain, just north of Portugal. They were pushed out by the Romans over 2,000 years ago, but their culture still lives on, as many who live in the current region of Galicia still celebrate their Celtic roots. There's even a Celtic symbol on their flag. If you come here, don't be surprised to hear Celtic traditions and languages being spoken. There are also Celts in France, even, if you remember, in the Brittany region. Who would rule Spain next? The answer is the Carthaginians. Mostly. In 208 BCE, the Romans and Carthaginians, who by the way founded Barcelona, Hannibal did, specifically, fought at the Battle of Bacula during the Second Punic War, which you might remember. It was a Roman victory. Never again will the Carthaginians ever rule over any part of Spain again. By 20 BCE, all of modern-day Spain was part of the Roman Empire under the Hispania province, which is where the term Hispanic comes from, if you ever wondered. In 476, the Western Roman Empire fell after becoming too big, which gave the Visigoths a few ideas. Did they have a part in Rome's fall? They might have. Up until 710, almost all of Spain was ruled by the Visigothic kingdom, as it is now called. The Visigoths were a Germanic people who came from a bit north of the Alps. However, the Visigothic kingdom was soon to end. Around 575, the Gothic king at the time, Hermenegildo or Gildo, converted to Chalcedonian Christianity. Later, he converted to Roman Catholicism. From now on, Spain would be a very Christianized society and place. Mostly. Until in 711, a completely foreign religion thrashed its way into Spain. It's Islam! That's right. In 711, the Umayyad Caliphate invaded Spain. By 718, 7 years later, they had conquered all of modern-day Spain. Surprise, surprise, Christianity. This must have angered the Spanish Christians, you tell me. Well, it did. What was their response? Well, let me tell you. Spain's Christians responded to this by introducing the Reconquista, as it is now called, where they would later unconquer themselves from Muslim rule. How long would it take them? Not too long. It only took them about 800 years, with it finally ending on January 2nd, 1492. In 801, Charlemagne conquered Barcelona. He and his successor, Louis the Pious, would rule Barcelona in northeast Spain until 870, roughly. They tried to conquer all of Spain to help expel the Umayyad Moors, which were basically the Muslim settlers, but this did not work out for them. In 985, the Umayyad Caliph in Hispania, Abu Amir al-Mansur, was sick of the Christians attacking him, so he burned down Barcelona. 2 years later, in 987, he sacked Leon. Then, he sacked the sacred Christian shrine in Santiago de Compostela, which people still pilgrimage to today. He then died, leading to the collapse of the smaller Cordoba Caliphate inside of the Umayyad province of Hispania. The Spaniards saw a chance to strike back. Around 1040, Ferdinand the Great of the Kingdom of Leon, he was king by the way, gave his brothers a little friendly reminder who was boss when he defeated all of them in war. He then remembered that the Muslim Moors in the south were still threatening his power, so he went to the Muslim rulers of Toledo, Seville, or Seville, and Badajoz, and made all of them pay him. He also removed all of their power and basically gave them no powers except existing for their communities. So have at it. After the death of Ferdinand I of Leon, his son, Alfonso VI, came to power. He then demanded the Moors accept him as king and begin paying taxes. They didn't, got nervous, and called to the Almoravid rulers of Morocco to stop him. And so, in 1086, the Almoravids crushed Alfonso at the Battle of Sulaca. Now, Spain's Christian kingdoms were being threatened by the Islamic Almoravids of Morocco. In 1135, Alfonso VII took the throne of Leon. However, he wanted to be king of all of Spain. In 1135, the same year, he coronated himself king of all of Spain in Leon, but literally no one recognized him. Anyways. In 1157, the Almohads of Morocco thought the Almoravids were a bit too weak, so they took over. They then took the city of Almeria. They also made sure Spain's Christian kingdoms didn't try anything funny. On July 16, 1212, the kingdoms of Castile, Navarre, Aragon, and Leon worked together to fight the Almohads at the Battle of Los Llanos de Tolisa. It was a major Christian coalition victory and kicked the Almohads out of Spain. This also pushed the Reconquista back into full swing. In 1231, James I of Aragon wanted more land, so He conquered the tiny kingdom of Majorca and the Balearic Islands and set up another puppet monarchy, still under his rule, for his son. This kingdom was also called the Kingdom of Majorca. That's not confusing at all. In 1235-ish, the new king Ferdinand III merged the kingdoms of Castile and Leon to create the new kingdom of Castile and Leon. Its power would only continue to grow. Ferdinand III of the newly formed Kingdom of Castile and Leon, realizing he had a lot more weapons and soldiers, had an idea to conquer some Muslim lands in the south. In 1236, he conquered Cordoba, Almeria in 1243, Leon in 1246, and Seville in 1248. After, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain became Granada. On October 30th, 1340, Alfonso XI of Castile and Leon and Alfonso IV of Portugal obliterated Sultan Abu al-Hassan of the Moroccan Malinid dynasty at the Battle of Rociado. This victory blocked the Malinid dynasty's attempt to conquer Spain. After the death of the aforementioned Alfonso XI of Castile and Leon erupted into civil war from 1351 to 1369 over who would rule Castile and Leon next, Peter the Cruel of Castile or Henry of Trastamara. Now known as the Castilian Civil War, it was a decisive victory for Henry of Trastamara, beginning the Trastamara dynasty. In 1385, John I of Castile and Leon betrayed one of, if not their greatest ally, Portugal, and invaded them. This made the Portuguese remember their unique identity separated from Spain, causing their nationality to go through the roof. As a result, John's invasion was put to an end at the Battle of Aljubarrota when the Portuguese won. It would be a long time before Portugal would trust Spain. From 1415 to 1453, a string of spoiled and ego-filled dukes began wanting more power. The king didn't give Alvaro de Luna what he wanted, and he was executed. On October 19th, 1464, Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile married, uniting Spain for the first time. They combined their armies to finish what was started almost 800 years earlier, the Reconquista. In 1492, Granada, Spain's last Muslim stronghold, was conquered. On January 2nd, 1492, all of Spain was under one united single monarchy, something many people would have ever doubted would happen. Also in 1492, a man from Genoa, Italy, named Cristoforo Colombo traveled to the royal court of England and asked Henry VII to pay for his voyage to the Indies, but he refused. Then, he went to the royal court of John II of Portugal to do the same thing, but he got rejected. But, when he went to Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, after a lot of negotiating, they agreed. He was named Cristoforo, but to many, he was one man. Christopher Columbus! On October 13th, 1492, Christopher Columbus arrived in what's now the Bahamas, although since he arrived on the 13th, that was unlucky for him, so he changed it to the 12th, which is also Spain's national day, and it's also Columbus Day. I don't celebrate it. You'll find out later in this segment. He would make 3 more voyages to the Americas, in 1493, a year later, 1498, and 1502. He also went to what's now Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. Its capital, Santo Domingo, was founded by his brother, Bartholomew. That's an elegant name. Columbus also thought he was in the Indies. No, he didn't discover the Americas. The natives did, technically, but they're from Asia, so technically no one's native to here. Speaking of natives, when he went back to Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492 for the end of his first voyage, he told them about the swaths of gold back in what he thought was the Indies. which made Ferdinand lose it, beginning the colonial period of the Americas. Columbus and his crew's disease killed 90% of natives in North America, aka 55 million deaths, just shy of World War II. Researchers a few years ago found that the planet's climate changed after this. After this, Columbus's legacy became very controversial. Whether you think he's a good person or a very bad person, his legacy lives on. In 1500, the Spanish Inquisition became insane. It was started by a group known as the Spanish Inquisition, whose goal was to force all people they could find to be Catholics, but if they didn't become Catholics, what would happen? They would be brutally tortured. Around 500,000 people were killed in this horrendous time, but the death continues in 1519, Hernan Cortez caused the end of the Aztec Empire by being responsible for the death of their king or ruler, Montezuma II, aka Montezuma. He also invited people and other tribes who hated the Aztecs to fight them. If you want to learn more, watch my history of Mexico. I go into a lot further detail. Otherwise, we've got to continue. In 1531, Francisco Pizarro, another Spanish conquistador, arrived in the Incan Empire in present-day Peru. Here, he had their leader, Atahualpa, killed. Pizarro then conquered the Incan Empire. Then, he became unpopular after not supporting another Spanish leader. This led to his own death on June 26, 1541. Overall, 7.7 million Incans were killed by Francisco Pizarro and his crew. From 1562 to 1598, Spain partook in the French Wars of Religion, fighting alongside the Papal States as the Catholics, and they fought against England and the Huguenots as the Protestants. It was a truce. Nothing really happened for Spain, just them being Catholic today. From 1560 to 1648, Spain fought with England, France, Scotland, and the United Provinces, which is a combination of the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, in the 80 Years' War. It was fought over the United Provinces, or the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, trying to gain independence from Spain, which they somehow got. It was a Spanish defeat, causing the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg under the United Provinces to gain independence. In 1605, Miguel de Cervantes published his now infamous book, Don Quixote. It became so popular, it began the Spanish Golden Age. It was a period of peace. That's nice, after all this death. Then, Juan de Herrera built El Escorial, a palace he built for Philip II, which he absolutely loved, beginning a new era of Spanish architecture. It would have been a great time to be alive compared to what will happen for the next event. In 1618, that peace ended with the 30 Years' War. In it, Spain fought with the Holy Roman Empire and Saxony against Bohemia, Transylvania, the Netherlands, England, the Ottoman Empire, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Prussia, and France over the Bohemians hating the Habsburgs. Spain, now the Spanish Empire, lost. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg officially gained independence as unique independent nations. This war ended 30 years later in 1648. What, do you think the 30 Years' War would have been 29 or 31 years? Think again. From 1635 to 1659, Spain fought against France in the Franco-Spanish War. It started when France backed revolt against Spanish rule in Portugal and Sicily and Italy. It was a truce. It ended with the Treaty of the Pyrenees, which was signed on Pheasant Island along the French-Spanish border. Ever since then, they have given the island to each other for 6 months. That means they have swapped hands over this one island over 720 times. Trust me, Spain has some weird traditions. From 1571 to 1714, Spain descended into civil and later international war with a dispute of if Charles VI of the Holy Roman Empire or Philip V of Spain should rule Spain. It was a victory for Philip, allowing him to maintain his reign. This is now called the War of the Spanish Succession. From 1740 to 1748, Spain fought in the War of the Austrian Succession, which was over if the Bourbons, who were ruling Spain, or if the Habsburgs, who had been ruling Austria for a long time, should rule Austria. The Habsburgs won, making it a defeat for Spain. From 1756 to 1763, Spain fought in the 7 Years' War. It was a global conflict, but was mostly fought for territory in North America. Spain called North America Gold Town, but they really wanted it all, right? Sadly for Spain, they lost, and they had to give up all their territory in North America. From 1803 to 1815, Spain fought 3 wars at once. The Napoleonic Wars, the Spanish War of Independence, they really weren't gaining independence from anyone, and the Peninsular War, since Spain is on a peninsula. Spain won all wars. In 1820, a revolution broke out in Spain for the end of the old-timey, out-of-date monarchy. It was brutally suppressed, and the monarchy's power increased to become an absolute monarchy. In 1868, Spain had yet another revolution known as the Glorious Revolution, not the one in the Netherlands, this one. Also to end rule for the monarchy. It was a success, and Queen Isabella II was deposed, prompting a republic. However, the monarchy was restored again in 1878, known as the Bourbon Restoration. This must have been really annoying for the Spaniards. In 1898, the U.S. blamed Spain for the sinking of the U.S. Maine, since they wanted some islands in the Caribbean that Spain held. This began the Spanish-American War. It was a Spanish defeat, causing them to have to give up Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Philippines and give them to the U.S. From 1936 to 1939, Spain split in the Spanish Civil War, which was fought over who should rule, the democratic government or a fascist dictatorship. The fascists won, beginning the long reign of the cruel dictator Francisco Franco. He ruled until his death in 1975. In 2018 and 19, and kind of still today, there were a lot of people wanting independence for the Spanish autonomous community or region of Catalonia, with its capital Barcelona, wanting complete independence from Spain as a new country. It was repressed by Spain as they considered it unconstitutional. Their leader, I forgot his name, is now living in exile in, I believe, Luxembourg. Or the UK or something. But anyways, with that was my history of Spain. Thank you all so much for watching my longest history or video yet. Whether you watch the first 20 seconds or the whole thing, I really appreciate it. Coming up next is an obscure country from a request. Coming up next are the Marshall Islands. Hopefully by the time I cover it, it won't be underwater. Thank you for watching.